The bitter winter wind howls through the steel and glass canyons of Manhattan's financial district, where the Rothschild Tower pierces the gray December sky like a modern monument to wealth and power. Inside the penthouse office on the 88th floor, Alexander Rothschild III stares at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows, his steel-gray eyes haunted by shadows that money can't dispel. At just 35, Alexander has inherited not just the family's vast fortune and banking empire, but also something far more sinister, a curse that has plagued the American branch of the Rothschilds for generations. The weight of this dark legacy sits heavy on his shoulders as he adjusts his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit, a futile attempt to maintain the appearance of control. The curse began in 1922, when his great-grandfather, William Rothschild, betrayed his closest friend and business partner during the Great Depression, leading to a chain of tragic events that would echo through time. Now, as the 100th anniversary of that betrayal approaches, the curse's grip tightens. Every night, Alexander is haunted by visions of his ancestors' victims, their whispers growing louder with each passing day. His assistant, Sarah Chen, enters the office with her usual quiet efficiency, but even she can't hide her concern. "Mr. Rothschild, the board members are waiting in the conference room." Her voice carries a hint of worry. She's witnessed too many strange occurrences lately to maintain complete professional detachment. Alexander's empire is crumbling, not in the way that financial newspapers could report. The numbers still look excellent on paper, but in the shadows of every deal, in the corners of every room, something malevolent is working to destroy everything his family built. Technology malfunctions in his presence. Crucial contracts vanish mysteriously, and his most trusted advisors are beginning to experience inexplicable accidents. The curse manifests in more personal ways too. Alexander hasn't slept properly in weeks, plagued by dreams of his father's suicide last year, found in this very office, surrounded by strange symbols drawn in his own blood. The official story cited stress and mental breakdown, but Alexander knows better. He's seen the same symbols appearing on his own office walls, only to vanish when others enter the room. As he walks toward the conference room, the lights flicker ominously. In the reflection of a chrome doorframe, he catches a glimpse of a figure in 1920s attire, his great-grandfather's betrayed partner Marcus Blackwood. But when he turns, there's nothing there. The temperature drops suddenly, and his breath fogs in the air, despite the building's state-of-the-art climate control. Today's board meeting isn't just about quarterly reports and market strategies. Alexander has discovered something in the family archives, a possible way to break the curse. But the price might be higher than even a Rothschild can pay. It would mean dismantling the entire family empire, returning wealth to the descendants of those his great-grandfather wronged, and potentially exposing dark secrets that could shatter the foundation of America's financial history. The conference room doors swing open on their own as he approaches. Around the massive mahogany table, 12 board members sit in silence, their faces a mix of concern and barely concealed fear. They've all felt it, the creeping darkness that's infiltrating every aspect of the Rothschild empire. Behind them, through another wall of windows, storm clouds gather unnaturally fast over Manhattan, casting the room in an apocalyptic light. Alexander straightens his tie one last time, feeling the weight of both the past and future pressing down on him. He knows that by the end of this day, either the curse will claim another Rothschild, or he'll have to sacrifice everything his family built to save not just himself, but possibly the souls of all those who came before him. The board meeting descends into chaos when the lights suddenly explode, showering the room with sparks. Through the darkness, Alexander watches in horror as each board member's face momentarily transforms into the ghostly visages of those who died in the 1929 crash, victims of his great-grandfather's machinations. Sarah Chen rushes to open the emergency exits, but the doors won't budge. The temperature plummets further, and frost begins forming on the windows. Through the icy patterns, Alexander sees impossible reflections, scenes from 1922, playing out like a macabre film. His great-grandfather, William Rothschild, signing documents in secret, orchestrating the financial ruin of hundreds, while Marcus Blackwood, his trusted partner, remains oblivious to the betrayal. Mr. Rothschild, Jerome Wallace, the eldest board member, speaks up, his voice trembling. We've all seen things, experienced things. This isn't just about market fluctuations anymore, is it? The other board members shift uncomfortably, each carrying their own stories of inexplicable encounters within the Rothschild Tower. Alexander takes a deep breath and reveals what he's discovered in the family archives. A leather-bound journal, its pages filled with his great-grandfather's frenzied confessions, details the true extent of his crimes. William Rothschild hadn't just betrayed Marcus Blackwood, he'd orchestrated a massive supernatural ritual, using the collective despair of the ruined families to fuel a dark pact with something ancient and malevolent. The wealth and power of the Rothschild Empire wasn't built solely on financial acumen. It was built on souls. Each market crash, each strategic bankruptcy, each foreclosed home had been carefully planned to harvest human suffering. The curse wasn't just revenge, it was the price coming due. As Alexander explains, the storm outside intensifies. Lightning illuminates the room in strobes, revealing shadows that move against the natural flow of light. Sarah notices a dark liquid seeping from the ceiling, the same substance found around Alexander's father's body a year ago. The board members' reactions range from skeptical anger to terrified acceptance. Victoria Hayes, the youngest member, shares her own encounter. Security footage from the building's lobby showing people walking backward, speaking in reversed languages only during the midnight hour. James Chen, head of Asian markets, admits that his entire department has been experiencing shared nightmares about a figure in a 1920s suit, asking them to invest in their souls. But the true horror reveals itself when Alexander attempts to show them the journal's crucial pages about breaking the curse. The words begin to move, rearranging themselves into warnings and threats. Blood seeps from between the pages, and a hollow voice, recognizable as Marcus Blackwood's from historical recordings, echoes through the room. The debt must be paid in full. The curse's manifestations grow stronger with each passing minute. The board members witness their own bank accounts draining on their phones, their life savings converting into worthless stocks from 1929. Family photos in their wallets age and decay, showing alternate histories where their ancestors were destroyed by the Great Depression. Alexander realizes that the curse isn't just targeting him, it's spreading through the entire financial network his family built. Every transaction, every electronic transfer, every investment is becoming a conduit for the supernatural force his great-grandfather unleashed. Sarah, proving herself more than just an assistant, reveals that she's been researching similar cases of generational curses. She's found patterns suggesting that breaking such a curse requires more than just returning the wealth. It demands a complete dismantling of the systems built on that original sin. As the board meeting deteriorates into a fight for survival against increasingly hostile, supernatural manifestations, Alexander must make a choice. Continue his family's legacy of wealth and power, knowing it's built on supernatural corruption, or risk everything to break the curse before it claims not just the Rothschilds, but everyone connected to their financial empire. As the supernatural chaos in the boardroom subsides temporarily, the complex web of relationships surrounding Alexander Rothschild begins to unravel. Sarah Chen, whose quiet competence had always masked a deeper understanding, reveals that her grandmother was one of the many victims of William Rothschild's machinations. Yet she chose to work for the family, hoping to understand the truth behind her family's downfall. "I've watched you struggle against this curse, Alexander," Sarah says, her professional facade cracking for the first time in 3 years. "You're not like them, your father, your grandfather. You've been fighting it all along, haven't you?" The relationship between Alexander and Sarah transforms from purely professional to something more complex, a partnership born of shared trauma and supernatural horror. Her knowledge of generational curses becomes invaluable, though each revelation brings them closer to a terrifying truth. Victoria Hayes, the young board member, steps forward with her own connection to the story. Her great-aunt was Marcus Blackwood's fiancée, who died under mysterious circumstances just days after his suicide. From her family's archives, she produces letters that shed new light on the curse's origins. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was deeply personal. "Marcus wasn't just your great-grandfather's business partner," Victoria explains, her hands trembling as she reads from the aged papers. "He was like a brother to him. They grew up together, shared everything. The betrayal, it broke something fundamental in the natural order of things." James Chen, no relation to Sarah, reveals his own stake in the matter. His investment algorithms had been detecting patterns that defied logical explanation, market movements that seemed to follow the exact opposite trajectory of the 1929 crash, but only in accounts connected to the Rothschild empire. The relationships between board members begin to crack under pressure. Jerome Wallace, once Alexander's mentor, struggles between his loyalty to the company and his growing fear of the supernatural forces at work. "I've served 3 generations of Rothschilds," he says, his voice heavy with emotion. "I watched your father descend into madness, Alexander. I won't watch it happen to you too." A surprising alliance forms between Sarah and Victoria, who begin working together to trace the curse's influence through both financial records and family histories. Their research reveals a pattern of relationships destroyed by the curse. Marriages torn apart, friendships betrayed, children turned against parents. Alexander's personal life bears the deepest scars. His ex-wife, Isabella, had left him 2 years ago after experiencing terrifying visions of wealth turning to blood. Their young daughter, Emma, now refuses to visit the Rothschild properties, claiming she sees the sad people in old clothes wherever the family's money has touched. A maintenance worker, Miguel Rodriguez, enters the story with crucial information. His grandfather had been the building's first custodian in the 1920s and had witnessed the ritual William Rothschild performed. Miguel has been keeping a secret diary passed down through his family, documenting decades of supernatural occurrences in the tower. "Your great-grandfather didn't just make a deal with darkness," Miguel explains to Alexander. "He corrupted the very concept of wealth itself. Every dollar touched by this curse carries a piece of that corruption." The relationship between Alexander and his deceased father takes on new complexity as he discovers his father's private journals. The entries reveal a man tortured by guilt, desperately trying to protect his son from the family's dark legacy. The suicide wasn't an act of weakness. It was a failed attempt to break the curse by sacrificing himself. As these relationships interweave and evolve, the curse's grip tightens. Each person connected to Alexander finds themselves experiencing shared nightmares, seeing glimpses of Marcus Blackwood's ghost, and feeling an inexplicable pull toward the financial district's darkest corners. The most chilling development comes when Sarah discovers her own connection to the curse is deeper than she thought. Her grandmother hadn't just been a victim, she had been part of a group attempting to counter William Rothschild's ritual. This revelation creates a complex dynamic between her and Alexander, as they realize their family's destinies have been intertwined for generations. The pivotal moment arrives during a violent supernatural storm that engulfs the Rothschild Tower. As lightning strikes the building repeatedly, the ghost of Marcus Blackwood finally manifests fully before the trapped group. His form shifts between the dapper businessman he once was and the broken man who took his own life, his spectral presence distorting reality around him. "Your time of reckoning has come, Alexander." Marcus's voice echoes through the room as stocks and bonds begin raining from the ceiling, each page stained with blood. "But first, you must know the full truth of your inheritance." The room transforms around them, becoming a supernatural window to 1922. They witness the complete story of William Rothschild's betrayal, not just of Marcus, but of hundreds of families. The ritual he performed wasn't just about wealth. It was about binding generations of human potential to fuel the Rothschild empire. Sarah makes a horrifying discovery while this vision unfolds. Her grandmother's counter-ritual group had actually succeeded in creating a fail-safe, a way to break the curse, but at a terrible price. The only way to break it, she realizes, is for a Rothschild heir to willingly sacrifice not just the wealth, but the very thing that makes the Rothschilds who they are, their influence over the financial world. The true nature of the curse reveals itself through a series of rapid, terrifying visions. Every financial transaction processed through Rothschild-connected institutions has been feeding a massive supernatural debt. The skyscrapers of Wall Street appear as massive pillars of suffering in the spiritual realm, with the Rothschild Tower as the central conduit. Alexander's daughter Emma appears as a spectral projection, her innocent face twisted in fear. "The sad people are everywhere now, Daddy," she says, her voice echoing unnaturally. "They're in every dollar, every coin, every bank." The building begins to transform, its modern architecture morphing into a grotesque blend of 1920s design and living tissue. The walls pulse with the accumulated wealth of centuries, each heartbeat sending waves of corrupt energy through the global financial networks. Victoria Hayes, drawing on her family's connection to Marcus, becomes a temporary medium. Speaking with the voices of all those who died in the crash, she reveals the final piece of the puzzle. William Rothschild's ritual wasn't just a deal with darkness, it was an attempt to become the darkness itself, to transform his family, line into living embodiments of corrupt wealth. The turning point comes when Alexander realizes what he must do. The curse can't be broken by simply returning the wealth or dismantling the company. He must completely sever the supernatural connections his great-grandfather created, effectively erasing the Rothschild family's financial influence from history itself. But the price is higher than anyone imagined. To break the curse, Alexander must not only sacrifice his own wealth and position, but also take on the accumulated suffering of every soul affected by his family's supernatural corruption over the past century. It's a burden that no human was meant to bear. The ghost of Marcus Blackwood presents Alexander with a terrible choice. He can embrace the curse, becoming its willing vessel and gaining power beyond imagination. Or he can sacrifice everything, including possibly his own life and sanity, to free not just his family, but the entire financial system from its corrupt influence. As Alexander struggles with this decision, the building continues its horrific transformation. The board members find themselves trapped in a nightmarish version of the 1929 stock market crash, experiencing the despair and horror of that time firsthand. Sarah discovers that her own family's suffering has been feeding the curse for generations, making her both victim and unwitting participant. The moment of choice arrives as the supernatural storm reaches its peak. The ghost of Alexander's father appears, trying to warn him of something even worse coming, something that William Rothschild had unleashed that was never meant to exist in our reality. The pivotal moment arrives during a violent supernatural storm that engulfs the Rothschild Tower. As lightning strikes the building repeatedly, the ghost of Marcus Blackwood finally manifests fully before the trapped group. His form shifts between the dapper businessman he once was and the broken man who took his own life, his spectral presence distorting reality around him. "Your time of reckoning has come, Alexander," Marcus's voice echoes through the room as stocks and bonds begin raining from the ceiling, each page stained with blood. "But first, you must know the full truth of your inheritance." The room transforms around them, becoming a supernatural window to 1922. They witness the complete story of William Rothschild's betrayal, not just of Marcus, but of hundreds of families. The ritual he performed wasn't just about wealth. It was about binding generations of human potential to fuel the Rothschild empire. Sarah makes a horrifying discovery while this vision unfolds. Her grandmother's counter-ritual group had actually succeeded in creating a fail-safe, a way to break the curse, but at a terrible price. The only way to break it, she realizes, is for a Rothschild heir to willingly sacrifice not just the wealth, but the very thing that makes the Rothschilds who they are, their influence over the financial world. The true nature of the curse reveals itself through a series of rapid, terrifying visions. Every financial transaction processed through Rothschild-connected institutions has been feeding a massive supernatural debt. The skyscrapers of Wall Street appear as massive pillars of suffering in the spiritual realm, with the Rothschild Tower as the central conduit. Alexander's daughter Emma appears as a spectral projection, her innocent face twisted in fear. "The sad people are everywhere now, Daddy," she says, her voice echoing unnaturally. "They're in every dollar, every coin, every bank." The building begins to transform, its modern architecture morphing into a grotesque blend of 1920s design and living tissue. The walls pulse with the accumulated wealth of centuries, each heartbeat sending waves of corrupt energy through the global financial networks. Victoria Hayes, drawing on her family's connection to Marcus, becomes a temporary medium. Speaking with the voices of all those who died in the crash, she reveals the final piece of the puzzle. William Rothschild's ritual wasn't just a deal with darkness. It was an attempt to become the darkness itself, to transform his family line into living embodiments of corrupt wealth. The turning point comes when Alexander realizes what he must do. The curse can't be broken by simply returning the wealth or dismantling the company. He must completely sever the supernatural connections his great-grandfather created, effectively erasing the Rothschild family's financial influence from history itself. But the price is higher than anyone imagined. To break the curse, Alexander must not only sacrifice his own wealth and position, but also take on the accumulated suffering of every soul affected by his family's supernatural corruption over the past century. It's a burden that no human was meant to bear. The ghost of Marcus Blackwood presents Alexander with a terrible choice. He can embrace the curse, becoming its willing vessel and gaining power beyond imagination. Or he can sacrifice everything, including possibly his own life and sanity, to free not just his family, but the entire financial system from its corrupt influence. As Alexander struggles with this decision, the building continues its horrific transformation. The board members find themselves trapped in a nightmarish version of the 1929 stock market crash, experiencing the despair and horror of that time firsthand. Sarah discovers that her own family's suffering has been feeding the curse for generations, making her both victim and unwitting participant. The moment of choice arrives as the supernatural storm reaches its peak. The ghost of Alexander's father appears, trying to warn him of something even worse coming, something that William Rothschild had unleashed that was never meant to exist in our reality. The Rothschild Tower shudders violently as it reaches. Midnight, its steel and glass structure now more paranormal than physical. Alexander, his body barely containing the absorbed curse energy, stands at the epicenter of the supernatural storm. The New York skyline outside has transformed into a hellish reflection of 1929, buildings bleeding dark money into the sky. Marcus Blackwood's ghost materializes one final time, but now accompanied by hundreds of other spirits, all victims of the Rothschild curse. They form a swirling vortex around the tower's peak, their combined energy threatening to tear reality apart. The barrier between the financial and spiritual worlds begins to collapse completely. It was never about the money, Marcus's ghost reveals, his form flickering between past and present. Your great-grandfather didn't just create a curse, he created a door, and now what he invited in wants to collect. The true horror emerges. An ancient entity of pure greed, summoned by William Rothschild's ritual, has been slowly manifesting through the global financial system. Every market crash, every economic disaster was this entity feeding and growing stronger. Sarah, her research finally complete, realizes the terrifying truth. The curse isn't just on your family, Alexander, she shouts over the howling supernatural wind. It's infected the entire concept of wealth itself. If we don't stop it now, it will consume everything. The entity begins to take physical form, using the Rothschild Tower as its vessel. The building's structure twists into impossible geometries, each floor becoming a mouth hungry for more wealth, more souls, more futures. The board members find themselves floating in a void of corrupted time, witnessing every financial transaction. In history, simultaneously, Alexander makes his final decision. Using the knowledge from Sarah's grandmother's counter-ritual and his own absorbed curse energy, he begins the ultimate sacrifice. "I reject it," he declares, his voice carrying supernatural weight. "I reject the name Rothschild, the wealth, the power, and everything built on this corruption." The entity fights back, offering Alexander visions of unlimited power, showing him futures where he rules not just the financial world, but reality itself. The temptation is almost overwhelming, but Sarah's presence anchors him to his humanity. Victoria, channeling Marcus Blackwood's final moments, provides the spiritual strength needed to resist. The climactic ritual begins. Alexander starts systematically severing every supernatural connection his family created over the past century. Each cut releases explosive bursts of energy, restoring stolen futures to their rightful owners. The process is killing him, but he continues, determined to finish what he started. The entity, realizing it's losing its hold on our reality, launches a final assault. It possesses the bodies of the board members, forcing Alexander to face corrupted versions of his mentors and colleagues. Jerome Wallace, fully possessed, attacks with supernatural strength, while James Chen's possessed form manipulates reality through corrupted algorithms. Sarah, drawing on her family's legacy of resistance, creates a protective circle using modern technology and ancient symbols. Victoria, now fully embracing her role as a medium, channels the combined strength of all the curse's victims to help Alexander. The tower begins to collapse, both physically and metaphysically. Each floor disappears into a void of corrected time, taking with it decades of supernatural corruption. The entity, desperate to maintain its hold, offers one final temptation. It shows Alexander a way to save himself and keep his wealth, but at the cost of sacrificing everyone else in the building. In the final moments, Alexander embraces the full weight of his family's sins. His body, now more energy than flesh, becomes a conduit for all the pain, suffering, and stolen futures of the past century. The entity, realizing too late that it has lost, tries to retreat, but Alexander holds it in place. The debt will be paid, Alexander declares, his voice mixing with those of all his ancestors. Not in wealth, but in truth. Just as Alexander's sacrifice seems to be succeeding, an unexpected shift occurs. The entity, in its death throes, reveals a devastating truth. William Rothschild wasn't the architect of the curse, he was its first victim. A hidden figure emerges from the temporal chaos, Marcus Blackwood himself, or rather, what he had become. The true history unfolds in a series of shocking visions. Marcus hadn't been the betrayed partner, he had orchestrated everything from the beginning. His suicide wasn't an act of despair, but the final component of a ritual designed to bind his consciousness to the financial system itself. William Rothschild's apparent betrayal was actually his failed attempt to stop Marcus's plan. Sarah, piecing together this new information with her grandmother's records, realizes the implications. The curse isn't just about the Rothschilds, she gasps. It's about the entire concept of inherited wealth. Marcus found a way to become its guardian spirit, its dark angel. The entity that everyone thought was a demon of greed is actually Marcus's transformed consciousness, evolved over decades of feeding on financial suffering. The Rothschild curse was merely one manifestation of his larger plan to corrupt all. Generational wealth transfer. Alexander, still channeling a century of cursed energy, finds himself at a new crossroads. The sacrifice he prepared for won't break the curse. It will only feed Marcus's greater scheme. The true solution requires something far more complex. Not the destruction of wealth, but its fundamental transformation. Victoria, still serving as a medium, suddenly channels Marcus's original victims, not the people who lost money in the crash, but the ancient spirits of commerce and fair exchange that his ritual corrupted. Through her, they reveal that wealth itself isn't inherently corrupt. It's the systems of inheritance and hoarding that created the vulnerability Marcus exploited. The tower, now suspended between realities, becomes a battleground between two forms of wealth. Marcus's corrupted version, built on suffering and inheritance, and a more pristine form that the original spirits represent, wealth built on fair exchange and actual value creation. Sarah discovers that her grandmother's counter-ritual wasn't meant to destroy the curse, but to transform it. The symbols in Alexander's father's suicide scene weren't desperate last acts, but pieces of this larger transformation ritual, waiting for the right moment and the right person to complete them. A new choice presents itself to Alexander. Instead of sacrificing himself to destroy the curse, he can use his position as both a Rothschild and a curse-bearer to become something else. A guardian of ethical wealth, a force to balance Marcus's corruption. The board members, still trapped in temporal distortion, begin experiencing visions of alternative financial systems, ways of building and sharing wealth that don't create the vulnerabilities Marcus exploited. These visions offer a blueprint for what could be if Alexander succeeds. The storm around the tower intensifies, but its nature changes. Instead of destruction, it begins to feel like transformation. The very fabric of financial reality hangs in the balance as Alexander prepares to make a decision that will affect not just his family's curse, but the very nature of wealth itself. In the final moments of this supernatural financial apocalypse, Alexander makes his choice. Rather than destroying or surrendering to the curse, he begins a complex ritual of transformation. The Rothschild Tower, now existing in multiple realities simultaneously, becomes the focal point for this unprecedented supernatural restructuring. Using Sarah's grandmother's counter-ritual combined with his absorbed curse energy, Alexander begins to rewrite the fundamental rules of corrupted wealth. Marcus Blackwood's consciousness, still believing it has the upper hand, attempts to merge with Alexander, trying to create an even more powerful entity of financial corruption. But Alexander has learned from a century of his family's mistakes. Instead of fighting or embracing the corruption, he begins to transform it. The curse energy flowing through his veins starts to change, turning from a dark, corrupting force into something new, a purifying flame that burns away the supernatural rot while preserving the true essence of wealth. The tower starts to collapse inward, floor by floor, but not into destruction. Each level transforms into a pure manifestation of what ethical wealth exchange should be. The board members, still suspended in their temporal bubble, witness the birth of a new financial reality, one where value is tied to actual human potential rather than suffering. Sarah, drawing on her family's generations of resistance, helps Alexander channel the transformation. Her grandmother's counter-ritual combines with modern financial algorithms to create a new kind of wealth management system, one that automatically detects and prevents supernatural corruption. Victoria, in her final act as a medium, becomes the conduit for Marcus's original victims to reclaim their stolen futures. But instead of simply returning to their original paths, these restored futures create a web of positive financial relationships that begin to heal the damage done by the curse. The entity that was Marcus Blackwood fights desperately against this transformation, but each attempt to maintain its corruption only feeds into the purifying process. In a moment of poetic justice, Marcus's consciousness begins to fragment, each piece returning to the times and places where he stole power, but now acting as a warning rather than a curse. Alexander's physical form starts to fade as the transformation reaches its peak. His sacrifice is still necessary, but instead of death, he becomes something else, a conscious part of the new financial system, a guardian against future supernatural corruption. His human form dissolves into pure energy, merging with the transformed curse to create a protective barrier around the concept of wealth itself. The Rothschild Tower, once a monument to corrupted power, transforms into a nexus of ethical finance. Its physical form remains, but its true nature now exists in multiple dimensions, serving as both a functional building and a supernatural checkpoint against financial corruption. The board members return to normal space-time, forever changed by their experience. Each carries a piece of the new understanding, ensuring that the transformed system will have human guardians as well as supernatural ones. Jerome Wallace, the eldest member, becomes the first steward of this new system, his years of experience now guided by genuine wisdom. Sarah discovers that her role isn't over. She becomes the first of a new kind of financial advisor, one who can see and prevent supernatural corruption before it takes root. Her family's legacy of resistance transforms into a legacy of protection. The curse of the Rothschild family ends, but not through destruction. Instead, it becomes a blessing, a permanent reminder and safeguard against the supernatural corruption of wealth. Alexander's daughter Emma, now free from the curse's influence, inherits not wealth or power, but the ability to see and understand the true nature of value. The story concludes with a view of New York's financial district 1 year later. The Rothschild Tower stands transformed, its windows occasionally flickering with the energy of ethical transactions. Inside, Sarah continues her work, guided by the ethereal presence that was once Alexander Rothschild. The curse is gone, but its lesson remains. True wealth isn't about accumulation or inheritance. It's about the positive transformation of human potential. 5 years after the transformation of the Rothschild Tower, New York's financial district has become something entirely different. The building, now known simply as the Exchange, glows with a subtle, otherworldly light that only those who know its true nature can see. The supernatural transformation has rippled through the global financial system, creating subtle but profound changes. Emma Rothschild, now 15, visits the tower regularly. Though she no longer bears the weight of the family curse, she has inherited a unique gift, the ability to see the true nature of financial transactions. She walks through the lobby, watching streams of ethereal energy flow between people and institutions, each transaction now carrying a visible marker of its ethical nature. Sarah Chen has established a new department within the transformed Rothschild organization, training a select group of individuals who can sense financial corruption. Her grandmother's old journals have become the foundation for a new field of study: supernatural economics. The counter-ritual her family preserved has evolved into a modern system of ethical financial practices, combining ancient wisdom with cutting-edge technology. Victoria Hayes, forever changed by her role as a medium, now serves as the bridge between the physical and supernatural aspects of the financial world. She can still communicate with the spirits of past transactions, but now these conversations guide future decisions rather than warning of past crimes. The board members who survived that fateful night have spread across the global financial industry, each carrying a piece of the transformation with them. Their experiences have created a network of conscious capitalism that slowly but surely reshapes how wealth moves through the world. Jerome Wallace, in his final years, has written a coded history of the event, ensuring that future generations will understand the true nature of wealth and its potential for both corruption and transformation. His memoir, published under a pseudonym, becomes required reading in a secret course at major business schools. Marcus Blackwood's fragmented consciousness, now bound to the new system, serves as a warning beacon. When financial corruption begins to take root anywhere in the world, his essence manifests as a visible warning to those who can see it, preventing history from repeating itself. The transformed curse energy, guided by what remains of Alexander's consciousness, has created a new kind of financial ecosystem. Those who enter the exchange can sometimes hear his voice in moments of crucial decisions, not commanding but advising, helping maintain the balance between profit and ethics. Emma's mother, Isabella, has returned to New York, finally understanding what drove her ex-husband to his sacrifice. She works with Sarah, helping other families deal with the psychological impact of supernatural financial phenomena. The support group she founded becomes a crucial resource for those affected by residual curse energy around the world. Miguel Rodriguez has become the tower's chief custodian, his family's legacy of watching and recording now transformed into active protection. The maintenance protocols he oversees are as much about maintaining spiritual barriers as they are about physical upkeep. In the tower's highest floor, where Alexander made his final transformation, a permanent temporal window remains. Those who look through it can see glimpses of all possible financial futures, a reminder of the responsibility that comes with managing wealth. The Rothschild name fades from public prominence, but its legacy lives on in an unexpected way. Instead of representing unlimited wealth and power, it becomes synonymous with financial ethics and supernatural responsibility. The family's remaining assets, now managed by a trust, fund research into preventing supernatural corruption in emerging financial technologies. As the epilogue closes, Emma stands at the window of what was once her father's office, watching the flow of ethical wealth through the city. Behind her, barely visible in the glass's reflection, stands Alexander's transformed presence, not a ghost, but a guardian, forever watching over the delicate balance between wealth and wisdom, between profit and purpose, between the physical and supernatural worlds of finance. The curse of the Rothschilds has become the world's blessing, a permanent reminder that true wealth lies not in what we accumulate, but in how we transform it for the better.